Hello and welcome to Insurance in Canada. I'm your host, Rick Pineda. Thank you for joining me. On today's episode, we're looking at three stories. The first story comes out of Alberta, a recent bulletin put out by the Superintendent of Insurance in Alberta, and what that means for insurance availability for automobile in certain circumstances. Our second story, we're going to look at some good news for a change. Auto theft seems to be on the trending downwards in the first half of 2025. And our third story, we're going to be looking at a survey that was done amongst Gen Z and Millennials and how they're getting on with trying to work automobile insurance. So without further ado, let's take a look at insurance in the news. So our first story for today comes from Alberta, looking at a bulletin put out earlier this year by the Superintendent of Insurance of Alberta. Specifically, this bulletin here, 03-2025 Automobile Insurance Renewal Protection following broker contract termination, and what that actually means for brokers out in Alberta, as well as policyholders, automobile insurance policyholders. For people in Alberta, what happens if an insurance company cancels a contract with a broker. So some of you might be aware what an insurance broker is. It's an intermediary, it's an independent business person who arranges insurance on behalf of insurance companies for the general public. So they do not work for the insurance company. As it says, they are independent, but they do represent more than one insurance company. So you have insurance agents out there, like Desjardins agents and Allstate agents. So they are independent business people as well. They are insurance intermediaries. However, they only represent one insurance company. So that's the difference between brokers and insurance agents. So that's particular bulletin looks at what happens if a contract is canceled by an insurance company with the broker that they represent, because that is how the business relationship is established between the insurance company and the brokerage, is the contract, which details all the terms between the insurance company and the broker, what the broker is allowed to place in terms of business, how. So all the details are in that contract, and that contract can be canceled by either side. Um, Depending on the details of the contract itself. So let's take a look at this article. How Alberta Superintendent's Bulletin Affects Auto Cancellation. A recent bulletin from Alberta's insurance superintendent does not prevent insurers from refusing to renew a customer's policy provided it's done in accordance with the terms of the policy and applicable laws, and a high degree of caution is exercised by the insurer when undertaking such an action, says a lawyer specializing in insurance regulation. Provided the terms of the policy do not change, we are not aware of restrictions that would prevent the insurer from refusing the renewal, says Jesse Colin Schwartz, the senior associate in Denton's Toronto-based corporate and regulatory insurance group. However, such a refusal would require the insurer to maintain written documentation to show that no unfair or deceptive act or practice was being undertaken by the insurer. He adds any cancellations would have to comply with Alberta's Provincial Insurance Act and any unfair or deceptive acts or practices regulations. Simply put, the bulletin intent is to protect customers in situations where the commercial arrangement between an insurance broker and the automobile insurer terminates. This relationship could be terminated for a variety of reasons, such reasons would not be limited to an insurer terminating their relationship for a breach of the commercial relationship by the broker, he tells Canadian Underwriter. The June 30th bulletin from Alberta's Superintendent of Insurance indicates that insurers that terminate contracts with brokers and then refuse to renew private passenger vehicle insurance policies for existing Alberta customers who switch brokers to maintain their coverage may be in violation of sections of the province's Insurance Act. So when a broker places a policy, automobile policy, homeowners policy, regardless of the type of policy, the broker is the one who services the policy. So any changes that need to be done to the policy, any renewals that's done to the policy, the member of the public will interact with the broker. The member of the public, general public, does not interact with the insurance company. That is the whole point of the insurance company establishing this relationship with the broker is that the broker is the one who's going to be dealing with all the administration of the policy. The claim side, that is handled by the insurance company most of the time. So, but like I said, when it comes to the actual policy servicing itself, changes, anything else like that, it is the obligation of the broker to take care of that. Now, keep in mind the customer, while the policy is placed with that insurance company, most contracts is stipulated that the customer does belong to the broker. So if the broker wishes to place that person on, like for instance, when the renewal comes up, the premium might have increased quite a substantial amount. So the broker is going to shop around with their other insurance companies to see if a better deal can be offered. So if that is, then the broker can move that policy following all the proper procedures from that previous insurance company to the new insurance company, and the previous insurance company can't do anything about it because that client does belong to the broker itself. However, if an insurance company is going to terminate that relationship between themselves and the broker, there has to be some broker who's going to be taking care of that particular policy. You can't have a policy where there's no broker that's being, like I said, that's being mandated to administer the policy. The insurance company is not licensed to interact directly with the public, so that's why they use brokers. So this particular bulletin, we're talking about a situation where the contract is being terminated between the insurance company and the broker. More than likely, this is going to be initiated by the insurance company. What happens with those policies that's with the insurance company when those policies come up for renewal? So in many cases, normally the policy would just not be renewed, and if the client wishes to maintain that policy with that insurance company, they would have to go to another broker who works with that insurance company in order to maintain a policy with that insurance company. However, in many provinces, that would be seen as a new business. However, this bulletin put out by the Alberta Superintendent of Insurance says no, that would not be considered new business anymore. Carrying on with the article, specifically it says adverse contractual action provisions under the Act apply when a contract is terminated between an insurer and a broker. So if an insurer refuses to renew a customer's PPV or private passenger vehicle insurance because it no longer does business with that customer's broker, this constitutes an adverse contractual action under Section 551, Paragraph 1, Subparagraph D of the Act, and is therefore contract to Section 553, Paragraph 3 of the Act. It adds, if an insured wants to renew their policy with their existing insurer through a different broker, the insurer must treat the policy as a renewal and not as a new policy. The requirement applies to all private passenger vehicle policies in Alberta, whether or not the insured meets the province's threshold for qualifying as a good driver. So yeah, it does make a big difference for many clients, because like I said, a lot of the times, if that client wants to maintain that policy with that insurance company that they were with before, they would be treated as a new business. That means if they had an at-fault accident over the last few years, but maybe they had accident forgiveness with that insurance company, so that accident wasn't being rated for and it wasn't affecting their premiums. If you're being treated as new business, that accident forgiveness doesn't apply anymore, so the accident could be charged for. Also, if the situation of the insured is such that maybe they have too many accidents, moving violations, such that if they were new business, the insurance company would not accept it, but maybe the insurance company has slightly different underwriting rules when it comes to acceptance for renewals as opposed to new business. So maybe that insured would have qualified for that insurance company on renewal, but they wouldn't qualify for new business. That's another situation where this particular clarification from the superintendent would definitely help them remember the general public, because if they were treated as new business, they wouldn't qualify for that insurance company. They'd have to seek insurance elsewhere, which means their rates could go up substantially because they are new business, not only with their previous insurance company, but every other insurance company as well in the province. It adds, carrying out the article, it adds, if an insured wants to renew their policy with the existing insurer through a different broker, sorry, we just read that. Colin Schwartz notes the bulletin from Alberta's regulator intends to protect all customers, not just those defined as good customers by the province. If such customers need to change brokers in order to continue purchasing automobile cover from a particular insurer, asked if the bulletin could represent an expansion of take-all-comers regulation, Colin Schwartz says that does not appear to be the spirit of the action, that it could be a corollary result. For those of you who take all comers regulation, certain provinces, and Ontario is one of those provinces, have certain rules that state that an insurance company would not be able to refuse to insure somebody, or could not refuse to renew a policy unless there is some sort of rule in their underwriting manual that states that they would not be able to insure that particular piece of business, or would not renew that particular piece of business. Normally, combination of at-fault accidents, moving violations, cancellations for non-payment, cancellations for misrepresentation, non-disclosure. Those sort of things would be reasons why an insurer would not want to insure you, or not want to renew your policy. But unless there's a specific rule that states that the insurance company can't renew in their manual, then they have to accept you. So that's what a take-all-comer regulation states. Alberta has it, Ontario has it as well. Other provinces would have that as well. Mostly you find those sort of regulations in those provinces that have private insurance schemes, such as Alberta, Ontario, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, PEI. Basically any other province except for British Columbia, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, who have crown corporations that provide mandatory coverages for all the drivers in those particular provinces. So that is what is going on in Alberta. Next article, auto theft sees sharp drop in first half of 2025, Industry Association says. Always nice to have some good news. We're reporting a lot of bad news lately, so always good to have some good news. Let's see what we have it here in this article. The pace of auto theft is dropping in Canada thanks to collective efforts to crack down on thieves, says an industry group focused on insurance fraud and crime. Equite Association, I've talked about this association in previous episodes. So this is the association that deals with combining the Insurance Bureau of Canada Crime Prevention, as well as another organization that was focused on crime prevention in the insurance industry, brought them together into one association. So this is the main association that tackles auto insurance fraud throughout Canada, so they're not province specific. So Equite Association said in a report released Monday that the number of vehicles reported stolen nationally dropped 19.1% in the first half of 2025 compared to the same period in 2024. Just over 23,000 vehicles were reported stolen in the first 6 months of the year in Canada, the report says. The decline is particularly stark in Ontario and Quebec, which saw annual drops of 25.9% and 22.2% respectively. The year-over-year drops are more modest in Atlantic Canada, and we talked about Atlantic Canada's theft problem in a previous episode, and Western Canada at roughly 9%. Alberta saw a decline of 12.5%. Brian Gass, a national president of investigative services at Equite Association, credits greater public awareness of the threat and efforts by various levels of government and law enforcement agencies to collectively tackle the problem. It's really definitely a collaborative effort, he says, and that is true. Once law enforcement and provincial and municipal governments started taking this issue more seriously, that's when and that was pretty much in 2024 is when the provincial and some municipal governments started really focusing on auto thefts, and now we're seeing the fruits of that labor from the various level of governments. The federal government as well started taking it seriously as well, trying to do more at the ports to try and combat vehicles from being shipped off, stolen vehicles from being shipped off from the ports. Carrying on with the article, Gas said law enforcement agencies in Ontario and Quebec in particular have stepped up enforcement with police units dedicated to vehicle theft. So far this year, residents of Ontario and Quebec have reported 9,600 and 3,889 vehicle thefts, respectively, high numbers that Gas attributed to the province's larger populations and proximity to the Port of Montreal. With 4,411 vehicles reported stolen over the first half of 2025, Gas said Alberta continues to lead the country in auto theft on a per capita basis. And I wonder if their proximity to the Port of Vancouver might have a factor in why vehicle thefts are so high in Alberta. Statistics Canada data released earlier this week confirms national progress on the file. The agency reported 17% annual drop in the rate of police reported motor thefts, down to 239 incidents per 100,000 people last year. In 2023, the number of auto thefts had increased 40% over the historic low recorded in 2020, StatCan said. I don't think we can take any numbers from 2020. Any numbers from 2020 you got to take with a grain of salt, because that was during the COVID pandemic. So those sort of numbers are going to be pretty skewed and not any sort of, should be seen as any sort of norm, in my opinion. That trend came to a head last year when the federal government convened a summit in February to address car thefts. Ottawa followed up by giving the Canada Border Services Agency millions of dollars in new funding to track vehicles leaving through the country's ports, after having given Ontario $121 million in January of that year to tackle gang crime and auto thefts. Gas said some of the progress can likely be attributed to Canadians' heightened awareness of the issue. Yeah, that's definitely a contributing factor now that people are realizing the threat when it comes to auto thefts and taking more steps in conjunction with the insurance industry as well, trying to bring more awareness to the general public about the risks of auto theft. Back to the article now. I think you can talk to anybody, and if their car hasn't been stolen, they know somebody's car that has been stolen, he said. I think they are taking those precautions and some of those steps to make their vehicle less of a target. Vehicle recovery rates also rose 3.4 percentage point year over year to 56.5% in the first half of 2025, Ekate Association said. The organization said that was nearing the pre-crisis level of 57.2% recorded in 2021. Despite progress on vehicle theft, the Insurance Bureau of Canada warned is still a significant concern and far from the only factor contributing to rising auto insurance costs, although it's still a big contributing factor to rising auto insurance costs. Unfortunately, the auto insurance industry is a little slow to react to trends going downwards when it comes to such things as claim costs, or in this case, auto vehicle thefts. They were quick to react when the auto vehicle thefts were rapidly spiking when it came to surcharging certain vehicles, especially those vehicles in the high theft vehicle list that you find from the Ekate Association. But when it comes to recognizing the fact that auto thefts are still on their trending downwards, it still will take some time for the insurance industry to respond to any sort of changes in premium to account for that, just because they want to see more long term if that trend continues downwards. So it may be a good sign to see the hope to make rates stabilize, but actually come down. That's going to take much more a long-term data before we can make that determination. Tariffs on vehicle parts are driving up the cost of repairs and replacement cars, the Bureau noted. Gas said that while it's not clear yet, tariffs might be playing a role in the increase. Ekate Association is seeing domestic chop shops and vehicle parts being sent overseas. He said that whenever there's a disruption to supply chains like the one made semiconductor inputs a hot commodity during the COVID-19 pandemic, the criminal element tends to adapt to meet that demand. While he's encouraged by the progress Canada has posted to date in tamping down auto theft. He said now is not the time to let up. That is for sure. So it's great that the numbers are coming down. However, the number of thefts is still quite high, especially in Ontario and Quebec. So there's still more work to be done, but at least we can see that what's being done is having an effect. So good news there. And our last story, an interesting survey. Insurers risk losing Gen Z millennials over poor digital experiences survey from a survey. And for those of you who are trying to remember, so I had to look this up myself. Millennials are individuals born between 1981 and 1996. Gen Z refers to individuals born between 1997 and 2012. So millennials should have been in the insurance game for a while now. So, but Gen Zers, those are the ones who will start getting old enough to getting their driver's licenses and consider getting a vehicle of their own. Of course, it's been noted that driver's license, people obtaining their driver's license, especially the Gen Z, has been a lot less than previous generations. So let's take a look at this article. 1 in 4 young customers has switched carriers due to frustrating digital interactions. The growing number of younger insurance customers are walking away from their providers due to poor digital experiences, according to new data from Insurity. The software company's 2025 Digital Experience Index, based on a national survey of policyholders, highlights a widening gap between insured capabilities and the expectations of digitally native consumers. According to the survey, 28% of Gen Z and 21% of millennials reported switching insurers after a frustrating experience with an online portal or mobile app. In some cases, digital friction is severe enough to discourage policyholders from using core services. 26% of Gen Z and 21% of millennials said they had avoided filing a claim altogether because they found the digital claims process too difficult to navigate. Okay, well, if Gen Zers and millennials are having trouble trying to navigate a digital claims process, doesn't bode well for the older generations, that's for sure. But I've seen most insurance companies' claims process when it comes to trying to file claims through an app, normally the mobile app from the insurance companies, or online at their website. I never thought any insurance company's process was ever too complicated for me, so I'm kind of confused what these kids are finding difficult to process when it comes to trying to navigate something that was kind of designed for them. You know, the portals, apps, this is kind of all targeted towards that generation, so it'd be interesting. Unfortunately, I don't think the survey actually gets into the details of what they find difficult to navigate, but I'd be kind of curious myself as to what they find problematic when it comes to trying to file a claim, such that they're not even filing a claim. Younger generations aren't just digital natives, they are the ultimate test of your technological credibility, said Sylvester Mathis, Chief Revenue and Insurance Officer at Insurity. If your online portal or claims app isn't intuitive, fast, and responsive, you're risking not just user frustration, but their trust and their loyalty. Okay, I'm not sure if the younger generation is the best benchmark. I suppose if someone in the older generation can use your technology, then that should indicate that it's pretty user-friendly. So the findings add urgency for insurers as Gen Z and millennials continue to grow in both economic influence and share of the insurance customer base. While 61% of millennials and nearly half of Gen Z respondents prefer paperless communication, the survey also found that trust in automation remains limited. More than half of Gen Z policyholders said they would only trust fully automated insurance processes under certain conditions, indicating a cautious approach to digital transformation that prioritizes transparency and control. The disconnect between customer expectations and insurer capabilities poses more than an operational challenge. In a market where convenience often drives loyalty, digital usability has become a key competitive differentiator. Insurity's report signals a broader shift in the insurance industry where digital strategy plays an increasingly central role in customer engagement. For insurers, the message is clear. Enhancing digital experiences is no longer optional. Those that fail to deliver streamlined, user-friendly platforms risk being left behind by a generation that expects more and is willing to look elsewhere to find it. Well, Gen Zers and Millennials, here's an idea. How about try using a broker? If you find all this process too complicated for you to navigate, well, that's what brokers are here for, to try and help navigate it for you or explain it to you. Yes, I know that actually means interacting with a real human being, but sometimes you've got to seek out experts in these fields in order to help you try and get the most out of the product that you're purchasing. So, that's just my idea, but there's always going to be a disconnect between what insurance companies think they're producing for the general public and how they're reacting. You see that, for instance, when it comes to telematics programs, those programs provided by insurance companies that will monitor your driving and give you a discount based on your driving habits. Insurance industry expected a much more positive reaction from the general public when it comes to a telematics program, and I have not seen that amongst my clients anyways. Any large uptake in signing up for these telematics programs. So it could be a scenario where insurance companies are getting much farther ahead than what the general public is willing to adopt, but that's just my opinion. So that's it for me for today. I'd like to thank you for joining me. If you like what I do here, please give this video a like and please subscribe for more. Leave a comment in the comment section about anything we've talked about in the 3 articles, your experiences when it comes to obtaining insurance in Alberta, whether you've seen it. You feel that auto theft is on the decrease, or anything I talked about when it comes to technology and insurance, please feel free to leave me your comment. Please feel free to leave me a comment about what you like that I do here, areas you think I can improve. Don't forget to follow Insurance in Canada on Twitter/X. And until next time, bye-bye.